Alright, so you guys have been asking about it. Let's get back to work on this H2 powered Crosskart project. Now that the frame is done, all the structural parts of the frame are added and it's now all welded together, now we can start working on hooking up everything like the brakes, the clutch, the throttle. We need to add a firewall, we need to add paneling eventually, we need to finish the doors, we need to hook up the gas tank, hook up the radiator, and then we can start working on wiring and trying to get this engine to fire up. Now, first thing let's work on is let's start working on finishing the differential. Now, to finish this differential and to get it ready for the first test drive, we need to fill it full of oil, we need to add a vent right here, so therefore if any pressure builds up in here from it heating up, it's able to vent properly. We also need to figure out how to get this C-clip to fit onto this groove, so therefore this axle, stub axle, half shaft, whatever this is called, actually stays in there. Now, this is the second pair of C-clips that I bought that apparently are supposed to fit on here, but it's too thick. The material is just too thick to fit into the groove, and I could try to buy a third pair and see if that works, or I could just simply modify this to get it to fit in here. I'm pretty sure it's the proper... is it the proper size? I hope so. First, let me see if I can just file this a little bit thinner to get it to fit on here. If that doesn't work, I could always widen the groove a little bit. But first, let me see if I can just file this a little bit thinner to fit into the groove. Wrong direction. At first, I'm just gonna try and rub it on a file to file it down. That's working. It's gonna take forever, but it does work. Alright, I'm not gonna film the whole process. I'll come back when it fits. Nice. That worked perfectly. Now, something I just thought of is the way that I had to file this C-clip down to get it to fit in this groove, I think is going to make it to where now it's going to be almost impossible to remove this out of the differential once it is set in place. Now, how this holds itself in the differential is there's a similar groove like this inside the differential that this clip fits into and expands and therefore holds this half shaft, whatever this is called, into the differential. And then essentially how you remove it is you just yank it out, and that forces the clip to move in and out of the groove. Now, because the clip is no longer rounded, I think it's going to make it to where it locks itself in place. Now, imagine it as, here's the clip, here's the inside of the groove inside the differential. Normally the clip is round, The C-clip is round, so it's able to be yanked out, moved in, and go past the inside of the lip. But now that the clip is flat, I think it's just going to lock in place and not be able to be removed. So let me take the C-clip back off and let me round the corners on the bottom side of this, and that will hopefully make it to where we are going to be able to remove this out of the differential whenever we need to. Alright, hopefully that will fix that issue. Now because the C-clip was thicker, let me just double check that it'll actually go in, but I'm not going to set it in all the way. Okay, so it will go past the splines. Awesome. Now, it is missing 2 bolts, one there and one there. I don't have the right size and length that I need for these bolts, so soon I'll go to Tractor Supply and get them, but for now it's good enough. Tad loose, but at least it's staying in there. Alright, let's fill this thing full of oil. Now, according to Google, this is the stuff you're supposed to use for a limited slip differential, so hopefully this is the right stuff. Now, I have absolutely no idea how much to put in here. Are you kidding me? So I'm just gonna fill it. I'm gonna try to fill it like halfway. Alright, I think that's enough. Yeah, I'd say that's about 3/4 of the way full. Are you kidding me? Dang it. Alright, I think I cross-threaded it. I need to remove this. I'll tighten this stuff down off camera, because I can't get it. So, it is the next day, and what do I find underneath the differential? A puddle of oil! Nice! The differential is leaking. Awesome. So, I think I have an idea of where it's leaking from, but unfortunately, to fix it, we now need to take it back apart. So even though I spent a good amount of hours yesterday assembling this, now I need to disassemble it to fix that oil leak. Nice. Yep, didn't really think I'd be removing these this soon. Yep, sure enough. Yep, sure enough, I forgot to put gasket maker on this surface and this surface when putting this back together the last time. Now, for some reason I thought that I already did, and I think what I was thinking about is I did use gasket maker when I put these two halves of the differential together, and then I thought that I also used gasket maker when assembling this together. But I actually went back and watched the video of the last time I assembled this together to see if I did use gasket maker, and sure enough, I did not. So, yep, I love having to do stuff twice, which, yeah, this sucks. But, yeah, let me clean this up, and I'll put some Honda, I'm probably just going to use Honda Bond. This stuff works great. I need to put it on this surface right here and this surface right here, then I can reassemble this. I probably should also use a little bit of Loctite on these bolts as well, just to make sure these don't loosen up. So I'm not sure how much I'm gonna film of doing this. I've shown assembling this a couple times now, so I may just do little little snippets of putting this back together and putting it back in the frame. Alright, so the differential is pretty much finished. Now I tightened all the bolts, the chain is at a proper tension, and I did not put oil in this just yet, just because I kind of want to wait for the Honda Bond to cure properly before putting oil in it, and I am really hoping that what I did solved the leak issue. I'm really hoping this does not leak anymore. Now, let's move on to working on something else. Now, Next thing let's work on is fixing these headers. Now for those who don't remember, these headers kind of got smashed really bad, and I ended up having to cut this out from right here, and obviously we need to fix it. So hopefully I have the same diameter of stainless and I can just add more to this and weld it together. We kind of need to do this now because the next thing I want to work on is the firewall behind the seats right here. And once we add that, this is going to be a lot harder to get to. So let's do this now. Well, I was hoping I was going to be able to remove it from the frame somehow, but ooh, nice, nice. Well, definitely not the prettiest I've ever done. One thing that kind of didn't help was I didn't have stainless steel that's the same diameter as this, so I had to use a little bit bigger stainless steel and cut a seam down the middle of it and then shrink the tubing to the same diameter, which kind of worked, but yeah, it's, again, definitely not the prettiest, but it should work. Now, while this is off the frame, I also want to weld this back on. I had to cut it off because it was in the way of the differential, so I added these two pie cuts that now bends it out of the way of the differential, and I want to weld it basically right there. So, but I'm not 100% sure that once I weld this in place, I'll be able to get this back in the frame and back on the engine. So let me first tack this on. Then I'll see if I can get the headers back in the frame and back on the engine. If I can, then I'll fully weld this out. Alright, this is incredibly thin material, so I just finished welding all this while it's not on there, and holy crap, it's thin and incredibly hard to weld. I blew through right there how many times, which looks like absolute garbage, but as long as it holds together, that's all I effing care about. Alright, hopefully I can get it back on the frame. It's so close to fitting. I'm not sure about this. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, it's really close to fitting. So this is the same diameter as this. So, all right, I am bound and determined to make this thing fit. Nice. I love it when that happens. All right, so I shortened it by that much. Let's see if it'll fit now. Come on, it needs to go forward a tiny. Nice. There we go. All right, that now works. So now let me fully weld it out. All right, so all the welding is finished. Let's put this back on the engine. Alright, so the headers are finally finished. That kind of sucked, and I honestly hate welding, or TIG welding stainless steel, especially paper thin stainless steel, because if you just hover over it for a little too long, it just blows right through, which definitely sucks. But at least it's done, it's finished. I did buy a muffler for this. It should hopefully get here in the next couple days. But that's something we can do later on because that's just right here and you can easily access that. So, again, the reason we had to do the headers now was because I'm going to be adding a bunch of stuff to the frame. I didn't want to make it to where the headers are going to be impossible to get to once I add a bunch of stuff. So that's, again, why we had to do it now. So, let's work on adding the firewall behind the seats. Now, I did Google it, and apparently you can make a firewall out of aluminum. It just needs to be a certain thickness of aluminum. Now, because this is right in front of the headers, this is 1/8 of an inch thick aluminum. And for these sections right here and here, because it's kind of next to the engine, not really in front of it, I'm going to use a little bit thinner aluminum for this. And then for these over here, because there's nothing really behind here that we need to get to, I don't think we need to make removable paneling right here, so I may just make these out of steel and weld them to the frame. Alright, so the firewall is mostly finished. I do want to add a little bit more up here to kind of hide the top of the engine. I'm mainly trying to eliminate the noise and the heat from the engine getting to the driver and passenger. I'm even thinking about putting some sound deadening stuff on here to make it a little bit quieter, as well as obviously build a firewall. Now, something I kind of want to say is I don't want to say I'm regretting this project, because I'm more regretting the way that I chose to build this project. Because when I chose to kind of build this project, it was because I started seeing comments from you guys saying that you guys are getting a little tired of watching me build the same thing over and over and over again. So I'm like, okay, let me step away from off-road vehicles for a little bit. Let me build something street legal. And my first idea was a budget aerial atom using a car engine. I really wanted to just buy a car that already ran and drove and rip the engine out, put it in the back of a custom-made chassis, and build like a budget aerial atom. But the reason I didn't do that was simply because I don't have room here to bring a car here. I'm kind of already super cramped with space. Both my temporary garages are completely full. Right now the mini trophy truck project is outside under a tarp. And I just didn't want to bring a car here, and it's like, where am I going to pull the engine out of? It's not even going to fit in this shed. And then I chose to, okay, let me not do that. Let me do a motorcycle engine, because they're smaller and a lot easier to move around. And that's when I came up with the idea of using this Kawasaki Ninja H2, simply because, as far as I can tell, no one has ever used this engine on a Crosskart before. And I was kind of hoping that that would be different enough to get most of my subscribers' attention to want to watch this project. But it seems like because this is another chain-driven motorcycle engine-powered project, it seems like the majority of my subscribers aren't really interested in that project, in this project. Now, let me say this. I really, really appreciate you guys that are actually watching my content and watching to the end of the video. Without you guys, there would be no way that I could pay for this stuff. But I will admit, with this project, I kind of spent way too much money on this engine and a lot of money on this project, and the videos aren't really performing that great. And I'm, with this project, I think 5 or 6 videos away from breaking even with this project, simply because it seems like the majority of my subscribers aren't really interested in this. I mean, the videos have been averaging like 45,000 views, which is, again, I really, really appreciate you guys that are actually watching this content. I'm just I think if I maybe did the aerial atom idea and not use a motorcycle engine, I should have done the car engine. I think that would have appealed to more of my subscribers, and maybe the videos would have performed better. And honestly, I would have spent a lot less money on the car than this motorcycle. This motorcycle engine cost way more than I thought it would. And because it's a motorcycle engine, now it's manual. I could have gotten an automatic car. It would have had reverse. It would have been easier to drive, and it would have been way easier to make street legal, because the car would have had a title already and a VIN number. I could have just transferred that to the new frame. Whereas this, I kind of have a feeling that this is going to be an absolute nightmare to get it street legal, because I don't have a title or a VIN number. So yeah, kind of regretting not doing the aerial atom idea. I kind of wish I did that and just figured out where to put the car. And either I need to start selling some projects, or I need to figure out some storage solutions, or get a couple storage units or something. I don't know. Again, let me say this. I really appreciate you guys that are watching my content. Without you guys, there would be no way I could pay for this stuff. So, Anyway, next video of this project, I want to finish the firewall. We need to start working on hooking up the brakes, hooking up the e-brake lines, the radiator, the gas tank, and start working towards trying to get this engine to fire up again. But anyway, I guess that's it for this video. Thank y'all for watching. I'll see ya in the next video.